Problem 17 asks me to solve for W. So I don't need to distribute because there's no set of parentheses. I don't need to combine like terms because that W is just on one side. I don't need to move because the W is just on one side. I don't need to add or subtract because I don't see any add or subtract signs, which means I just need to multiply or divide. So let me clear this up a little. So I'm trying to get W by itself. I can do this all in one step. The L and the H are both being multiplied to W, so both of them can be divided because the L will cancel and the H will cancel. Whatever I do to one side, I need to do to the other. So on the left side, I have volume divided by length and height. And on the right side, I have width completely by itself, and I have completed that one step. Problem 18 asks me to solve for F. So I do need to distribute the 5/9 to both pieces. So 5/9 times F. And then 5/9 times -32. I apologize, I did not have my calculator ready. There it goes. Oh my goodness. So 5/9 times -32 is a weird fraction, so math inner. So negative or minus 160 over 9. So I have distributed. I'm just trying to solve for F right here. So I do not need to combine any like terms because I don't have any. I don't need to move my F's to one side because I only have one. I do need to add or subtract. So I'm going to move the 160 over 9 to the other side. So C and a number are not the same, so I will just rewrite them. And then I do need to multiply or divide because there's no sign or operation in between 5/9 and F. I know I need to divide everything. So C and 5/9. If I do alpha y equals, remember I can get a fraction. So 160 over 9 divided by 5/9 is 32. And the 5/9 canceled and I have F. Now just a quick heads up, anytime you divide something by a fraction, you can also flip that fraction and multiply. So you randomly, this is kind of a complicated problem, but if you have C divided by 5 divided by 9, it might also be written as 9/5 C. So just to give you a heads up, that could happen. Problem 19 asks us which equation below shows a correct first step for solving x divided by 5 equals -20. So if I'm trying to get this x by itself, I can see that it's being divided. I kind of covered up the dividing line there. X divided by 5. In order to get rid of division, we multiply both sides by 5. So the first one is adding. B is subtracting. C looks like what I have. D would be multiplying on this side but dividing on this side. So C is the only one that has multiplication on both sides as the first step. Problem 20 says the solution of this equation has an error. Identify at which step the error occurred and explain what mistake they made. So starting with my original, the way I solve these problems is to do it step by step and see where I go differently. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 4 is 24. Keep the minus 2, keep the 4x. So 6x plus 24 minus 2. I see immediately in this first step that they did not distribute the 6 to both, or you could say to all, terms in the parentheses. There you go. So I can see they did 6 times x, but they did not do 6 times 4 to get 24 right there. Problem 21 says a shoe company is going to close one of its 2 stores and combine all the other inventory from both stores. These polynomials represent the inventory in each store. Which expression represents the combined inventory of 2 stores? So combined means we're going to add them together. So if I look at store A, I have a g squared and a number. Store B, I have a g squared, a g, and a number. So when I add, remember I'm combining like terms, so my g squareds, I have 1/2 and 3 g squareds. So in my calculator, I can add 1/2 plus 3, and it tells me I have 7/2 g squareds. If I look at my answer choices, all of my g squareds have 7/2, so I need to keep going. Or keep looking for an answer. I can't immediately find an answer through that. So next, I look at my g's, and I have -4/5. Notice that's the only g I have, and so I can't change that at all. There's nothing that will change those g's. So I'm looking for -4/5 g's, which I have on A and B, but do not have on C and D. So there's no way C or D could be my answer. And then for my numbers, I have 7/2 and 1/4. So in my calculator, 7/2 and 1/4, and I get 15/4, which matches answer choice A, so A would be my answer. B is not correct. I don't even know where they got that answer. Problem 22 asks me to identify the error in the work shown below. Explain why this is the error. So my first step is to take -1 and distribute. So I have 4 and -1 times 3x, -1 times -2, and that would equal 0. When I look at step 1, I see that they still have parentheses, so they did not distribute like we see in the first step of Don't Call Me After Midnight. And instead, what they did was they completed this operation first. So the error is they didn't distribute the -1 first. If you wanted to go into more detail to remind yourself what they did wrong, because we do see this mistake a lot, they took the 2 numbers in front and completed the subtraction before getting rid of the parentheses. Problem 23 asks us which of the following is equivalent to -6n minus 20 equals -2n plus 4 times 1 minus 3n. So it looks like they semi-completed the problem, so we'll work this problem and see if we get to a point that matches. So in my Don't Call Me After Midnight, my first step is to distribute. I do have parentheses, so I need to distribute 4 times 1 and 4 times -3. 3n. Everything else stays the same. And so far I still have too many things that don't match any of my answers, so I need to keep going. On the right side, I do have like terms that I can combine. So my left side is going to stay the same. My right side, negative 2n and negative 12n, is negative 14n. Oops, and then I have that positive 4. Again, this still does not match anything I have, so I need to keep going. I do have terms on both sides, so I do need to move my term to one side. Even though 14 is a bigger number, remember with negatives it's the opposite, so negative 14 is the smaller number. So I'm going to move that one. Again, it doesn't matter which way you move, as long as you move an n to the opposite side through the opposite operation. So 14 minus 6 is going to be 8n minus 20, and on the right side I have 4. I go to check, and I have some things that are getting a little closer, like I have an 8n and a negative 8n, but nothing that matches yet. So I need to keep going. My next step is to add or subtract whatever's outside of my box. So I have a negative 20. I need to add 20 to both sides. So 8n is left on the left. 20 plus 4 is 24. And this would match part A. If you move the 6n at this step right here, you would get negative 20. You don't have to write this down. I'm just showing you in case you did this. Negative 8n plus 4. Then you would move the 4, and you would have negative 24 equals negative 8n, which doesn't match any of your answer choices. Don't assume you made some mistake and it should be B. What you would need to do is just divide out that negative instead of the 8. Just divide the negative, and it would still match. Problem 24, in order to figure out the number of copies that need to be made, Ms. Williamson uses the formula C equals 20 plus parentheses 10 plus 5, S, to figure out how many copies C that need to be made for S amount of students. If she made 695 copies, how many students does she have? So we have a C value of 695 here. So I'm going to take my original formula and replace C with 695 because we know information about that piece. From here, I'm going to use my don't call me after midnight. I do have parentheses, but there's nothing in front of them, so I don't need to distribute. I do have like terms inside this parentheses that can be combined. So 10 plus 5 is 15s. I am solving for s, but I do not have s's on both sides, so I don't need to multiply or move. And then I do need to add or subtract. So I'm going to move 20 through the opposite operation. So 695 minus 20 is 675, and then I'm left with 15s on the right side. And then my last step is going to be multiply or divide. I divide both sides by 15. So 675 divided by 15 gives me 45 for S. So if you've been asked to write this out, or maybe your answer choices on the test are wordy, you would say 45 students. And remember, we use S for students and C for copies. They gave us copies, so we are not talking about copies.